At Capella University, education is as smart as the world around us. With the FlexPath format, you can take classes at your own pace, set your own deadlines, and even leverage your previous experience to move faster. Now that's smart. Learn more at capella.edu.
Introducing Force Factor Fundamentals. Exclusively at the Vitamin Shop, these men's health essentials have clinically studied ingredients like BioPurine for enhanced absorption. Yohimbine, pine bark, and L-arginine can help you strengthen blood flow and heighten passion with doses that may bring you the results you crave. Now you can save 20% on Force Factor, including the fundamentals at the Vitamin Shop. Get these men's health game changers in your life at any The Vitamin Shop store or vitaminshop.com.
A line of cars waiting to get into the park. So that was just kind of interesting, knowing that there was traffic to get into the park, and me walking, having just walked 4 days to get there, was going to reach that sign before these cars were.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. You know, the show is all about getting out there and having fun. We say that at the end of a lot of episodes, just get out there. But getting out there can be really challenging for a lot of folks, especially if they didn't grow up going outdoors or live in an area or in a family where the outdoors are not viewed as a safe and inviting place. If it wasn't for my family taking me out at a young age, I know that I wouldn't feel the same way about it, and I might not ever have the ability to overcome it through transportation or having, adequate, sufficient funds. I know there are plenty of times where money's tight and even a trip camping wasn't necessarily doable. And Julia, recognizing that, decided that she wanted to do some sort of trip to exemplify and to show the barriers that a lot of people face when getting out and utilizing and experiencing the outdoors. She decided to do that by walking literally from downtown Denver, right in the heart of the city. I'm talking the middle of the city, a big city too. Denver's by no means very small, it's huge. Walking from the center of downtown called Union Station, where all the buses are, where all the trains are, where everything kind of converges, and walking all the way to the entrance of Rocky Mountain National Park, one of the most popular national parks in the country. That was a 4-day walk. It's usually an hour and a half drive. What's so crazy about that is an hour and a half. Gosh, Denver to Rocky Mountain is just two totally different worlds. To think they're that close together still just blows my mind. But it took her 4 days. She walked, and not on a trail, by the way. She took the roads, literally walked on sidewalks where there wasn't a sidewalk. She walked on the road, had to jump guardrails to avoid cars. It was a life-changing experience. And what I love about this experience is it helped others. It helped, raise awareness for others and the obstacles they face, but it also gave her a life-changing experience just by walking roads that she's driven all her life. So the beauty of this experience is not only helping others, but it's also, and adventure is really all around us. One of our guests recently said, adventure is just right out your front door, right on the sidewalk next to your home. And it's true. That road, that sidewalk pretty much takes you anywhere in the world if you really start thinking about it that way. So I hope it encourages you to start thinking out of the box for your next adventure and realize that a life-changing experience for you and for others is not, in some far off land or is going to take millions of dollars. It really, or tons and tons of time off. It really can be a long weekend, a long walk, and a lot of blisters on your feet. So, but before we get started, I got to shout out some of our sponsors that are helping make the show happen. I really appreciate y'all's patience with the sponsors. They help keep the show going. I do this show all hours of the night, and part of what justifies it is a little ad revenue here and there. So we want to thank Rerouted, who help really make adventures possible. Another aspect, not just time and money to adventures, is also gear, and gear can be very, very expensive, especially if you're just getting into things and you look at the price tags on store shelves, definitely check out Rerouted if you're looking to buy or sell used gear. They make it very easy to do both, and they're trying to revolutionize that world. I've already bought a few things off their website. It's really convenient. They allow you to really get a good view. You can ask questions if you have any questions about stuff, and it's really unique stuff. I like having one-of-a-kind things, so rerouted.co is a fantastic place to buy or sell used outdoor gear. Another sponsor we definitely want to shout out is Gooder Sunglasses. I am wearing a pair right now. Well, actually, I'm in my closet, so I'm not, it's pretty dark in here, so I'm not actually wearing them, but they're on my head, and I've been wearing them all day. It's a bright, sunny day here. Love these sunglasses because that's another thing. Sunglasses can be so expensive. I lose them, I drop them in the ocean or drop them, on a bike ride somewhere. I don't want to spend a ton of money. And Gooder sunglasses are $25, $35, depends on the style, but they're amazing styles, tons of different options, very durable. They look great. And I went ahead and got my wife a couple pair. I got myself a couple pair. They've got a 30-day free return. And the cool thing is Gooder is a 100% carbon neutral company. I don't mind supporting companies that takes that kind of stance. They're also a 1% for the planet company. And if you'd like to give some a try, go to gooder.com. That's GOODR.com. Use the code ASP15 to get 15% off. Pick up a pair, pick up two, pick up three even. That's 15% off at gooder.com using the code ASP15. Tell them Mason sent you. Trust me, your face is going to thank you. Your eyes especially are going to thank you. All right, let's get into the episode. Julia Oleksiak, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell me, I always ask this first, where are you coming from today? And if that's not home, where's home?
Yeah, I'm coming to you today from Denver, Colorado, and that's basically home. I grew up in Lakewood, which is just, maybe 20 minutes west from Denver. So
no kidding. That's awesome. So this whole experience for you, I do an official intro, and folks heard kind of a summary of what you did in the intro, which was a walk essentially from downtown Denver to Rocky Mountain National Park. Can you tell me more about, was this out of the norm for you? Was this something you kind of grew up doing? Did you grow up in a family that did crazy things?
Yeah, definitely out of the norm for me. So I did grow up doing a fair amount of, kind of hiking and road tripping and things like that. My parents actually immigrated here from Poland. And so that was kind of one of the ways that we were able to do some traveling and adventuring in the US, was going, to national parks or to national forests and things like that. But this, the long hike and the long walk that I did was definitely not the norm for me or my family, I would say.
When did the idea start, and when did you start telling people about it, and what were some of the reactions?
Yeah, well, I guess I have to give a little bit of a background there. So I actually did this through hike as an ambassador for the Cairn Project. And I originally had looked into the Cairn Project and applied to be an ambassador for them in 2018. I was at that point in between jobs and looking for different opportunities and applying for a bunch of different jobs, and kind of found the Cairn Project through that process and applied to be an ambassador with them. And which isn't a job, it's a volunteer opportunity. And I was accepted into the program in 2018, but then actually kind of at the same time ended up getting a job. And so had to kind of defer that idea until 2019, when I was a little bit more established in the job and knew that I could have some time off and whatnot. So basically, because I had applied to be this ambassador and had, as part of the application, you pitch kind of an adventure fundraiser idea. So the idea had actually been in the making for probably about a year and a half before I actually started the hike, which was in August of 2019.
To be an ambassador for the Cairn Project, you have to actually have an idea like this to bring to the table.
Yeah, so again, I can give a little background on the Cairn Project. So The Karen Project is an organization that was created by two women, and the whole concept is basically they have folks apply to be ambassadors, and as an ambassador, you do an adventure fundraiser, and then the money that's fundraised goes into kind of this pot that the Karen Project then gives out in micro grants to organizations that specifically are helping to get girls and young women outdoors. So there was kind of a multi-tiered reasoning behind doing what I did, but a lot of the kind of adventure fundraisers follow a bit more of a traditional through hike, in the sense of maybe like the Colorado Trail or doing like a paddling trip or something like that. And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to do for my adventure fundraiser, I really wanted the thing, the physical feat that I was doing as well to kind of match my intention behind, why I wanted to partner with the Karen Project. And so I kind of was just thinking, I was like, what could I do? What would be something that I could do that would still follow along in this kind of like a longer, bigger, epic thing? And so one day I just was thinking, like, what if I hiked from Denver to Rocky Mountain National Park? And then my best friend's a landscape architect, so I kind of floated the idea to her, and I was like, hey, do you think there would be like a route from Denver to Rocky Mountain National Park? And so we kind of like started looking at the map together, and I didn't really, I guess, until I became kind of the Karen Project ambassador, I didn't really tell a lot of people that I was going to be doing it. And I think originally, trying to remember when I first like floated it out on my social that I was going to be doing it, but the actual like fundraising campaign really didn't start until like a month before I was doing the hike. So, but yeah, when I told people, I think, I know my parents and we're definitely like, wait, well, you're doing what? Like, why are you're going to be walking on the side of the road? Like, that sounds dangerous. So yeah, it wasn't like intentional that I kept it kind of under wraps, but I don't know. I also am more introverted. And so kind of like the immediate people in my family knew. And then it wasn't really until I started the whole, like, both fundraising and kind of like communications campaign, I would say, around what I was doing that the word started getting out further.
And can you explain like why you did this? What was the biggest reason and why you chose this route?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'm a first generation immigrant. My parents came here from Poland. But I recognize that there's a lot of privilege within that. So as I mentioned, like, we grew up going to national parks and things, and we had the opportunity to do that both with the transportation to get there, but also once we were in those spaces, we felt welcomed, or at least we didn't feel unwelcome in those spaces. And kind of as I started working more in the outdoor industry and learning more, kind of in the non-traditional sense, I feel like when I was in college, I didn't really, these aspects or these topics weren't really touched on, but learning more about kind of barriers to access and different things that people who, maybe don't look like me have to get past to be able to go to some of these places. So that, like, thinking through all of those things, that was really my why of this. During the kind of like campaign that I was running around it, my hashtag was walk the walk. And so I feel like I had done, had gone to trainings or had done a lot of talking about this or reading about like barriers, and had worked for some organizations in Denver that were specifically working to break down some of those barriers for youth in Denver that, like, they grew up in Denver and, hadn't had the chance or hadn't had the privilege to go to Rocky Mountain National Park. So kind of throughout that whole process, my big thing in the hashtag that I used was walk the walk. And so, I think there's a lot of talk around these types of issues, specifically now in 2021, around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I wanted to take that a step further and quite literally walk the walk.
Literally walk the walk all the way up to the park. And so, I think it's so fascinating because when we lived in Denver, it was honestly, obviously, like a lot of people, access to the mountains. It's just one of the most convenient metros to live in to get to really big mountains. And what blew my mind, my wife was a teacher there, The stat was thrown around a lot from REI talks to talks within the city to talks around schools. 80% of students at public schools in Denver, 80% of the students had never been to the mountains. And if you don't know, Denver's not in the mountains. It's just literally adjacent to them. It's just butted right up against the edge of the Rockies. And it, it does take an effort. It takes actually going into the mountains to experience it. And 80% of the kids have never been there. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, no, totally. And, I think a lot of the times there's this mentality of like, well, just go or just get out there. And, from to Rocky Mountain National Park, which, I think there's a lot of other cool places and a lot of cool nature around Denver and nature just outside your door. But to get to Rocky Mountain National Park, kind of this quintessential location, it's about an hour and a half drive from Denver. And, you're like, oh, that's not too bad, an hour and a half. But then when you actually start thinking about all of the things that need to fall into place to be able to get to a place that's an hour and a half away by car, like you have to have access to a vehicle or access to some sort of transportation. And if there isn't public transportation in place, like, do you have the money to be able to pay for gas or can you pay for gas to get to a place like Rocky versus, having to commute to work or whatnot? Or do you have the free time to go to Rocky Mountain National Park? So there's all of these various components there that I think, sometimes it's easy to forget that all of those things, are behind that decision of like, oh, well, it's just an hour and a half drive.
Yeah. Something we experienced when we first moved there in our just early 20s, young, newlywed couple, didn't have anything, poor as can be. And it was, is our vehicle reliable enough to go into the mountains? And there was one time we did go and it broke down on top of Berthoud Pass and we were stuck there. And so it was like, that was a level of trauma to get over for the next time we went. Just like that is a possibility. And it was during a snowstorm. So it was like, holy cow, things can go wrong really quickly. So if you've never experienced it and you don't know where to go or what to do, it can be extremely intimidating. And so your walk was to raise awareness about some of those, those things that get in our way, those obstacles that people face and experience in these places. Tell us about the walk itself. What did you do? Where did you start exactly? Obviously in Denver, but what was the route and what was that like?
Yeah. So when I was thinking about like where exactly in Denver I wanted to start, I knew I wanted it to be kind of in downtown again to really start in the city level. And then the more I started thinking about it, originally I was like, oh, maybe at the Capitol building. And then I was like, oh, why don't I start at Denver's Union Station? So for those who, maybe haven't been to Denver, Union Station is where originally like that was the old train station. And now it's kind of been remade and reimagined where there's like the light rail starts from there. You can get a train from Denver to the airport. A lot of RTD buses start there to get all across the city and sometimes all across the state. So I really wanted to start that was definitely a symbolic decision to start at Union Station, both to touch kind of on this, public transportation, and it really is kind of the heart of Denver. And then I did, so the whole hike in it itself was 68 miles. I broke that up into 4 days. And so day one, I started at Union Station and I went to Superior, which was 17 miles away. The second day was Superior to Lyons, which was 27 miles, which was a big day.
Jeez, yeah.
Then the third day was from Lyons to, there's this Forest Service trailhead kind of halfway up the canyon called Lion Gulch. So that was 13 miles that day. And then the final day was from that trailhead to the Beaver Meadows entrance of Rocky Mountain National Park. And that was 11 miles. And again, I chose that entrance of Rocky Mountain National Park. There's a couple of different entrances, but that's generally, the most popular way to get into the park. And kind of, or specifically if you're coming from Denver or from that side of the Continental Divide, usually people are going to the Beaver Meadows entrance.
Yeah, and Rocky Mountain is the third most visited national park, so it's a lot of traffic and a lot of traffic going the way that you're walking, and it's not from what I can picture in my head, having gone up there a bunch, it's not very walker friendly.
Yeah, you definitely have that right. So for those who haven't driven that way, within Denver and the city, and I would say even like Denver, maybe like there were some parts getting up to Lyons where it was really just walking on the side of the road, but from Lyons into Rocky Mountain National Park, it's a canyon, like a winding mountain road that's in a canyon. And so, as you'd imagine, not a very big shoulder, a lot of blind curves, cars, speeding past you. So I did in that section, I did a lot of like guardrail jumping. So in places where there wasn't like an adequate shoulder or basically no shoulder at all, I would, if there was a car kind of coming towards me, I would jump over the guardrail.
Oh my gosh.
Just to have like that barrier in between me and the oncoming traffic.
How unnerving is that? That's wild.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely wild. There were some parts, just like I remember being, in fight or flight, and just like my body being like having such an adrenaline rush during there was one specific section in there that just was like, it was so scary. And I remember at one point just sitting, there was like a little rock outcropping on the other side of the guardrail, and just sitting there being like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? But at the same time, as I was sitting there, and I was like, okay, like just breathe, just try to, it'll be okay. I looked across the road, like up the canyon wall. I heard like this weird sound, and then I just saw like some deer start running, and I was like, oh my God. So then like, not only was I worried about cars, I also was like, oh yeah, this is, outside of this road, this is a pretty secluded and mountainous area. Like this is habitat for wildlife. And just seeing those deer kind of start running after hearing that sound, I just was like, okay, I can't stay here. Like, I don't know what's up there, if it's, a mountain lion or something else. But, like at that point, I also could have been prey, right?
Yeah, you definitely could have been. I mean, it happens in that area specifically. And what's crazy to me is that you're starting at Union Station, and it is literally a downtown metro hub with millions of people living around it. And to know that you're about to walk on foot to a national park on foot, just essentially a long weekend later, that you're walking over the course of a weekend that far to where you have to transition from avoiding vehicles and avoiding traffic to avoiding mountain lions potentially, and elk and deer and bears. Can you tell us, like, what did it feel like to start out? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Was it, I don't really know what I'm getting myself into? Just take us through that.
Yeah, I would say kind of all of the above. I would say I was nervous in a way of like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. I don't really know what is going to happen. As I mentioned, This was kind of like a year and a half in the making, but leading up to it, like I tried to train, I guess you would say, and just in like I was intentional about going on more walks and trying to get in a couple more hikes and things like that. But it's, I didn't really know what to expect in terms of, I had, mapped out the route, and I specifically drove that road into Estes Park about a week before I was going to walk it, just to like really scope it out. But yeah, that change from kind of being in the urban setting to being in this like remote canyon where I didn't have service in the canyon for 2 days, on my phone or anything. So that was really strange to kind of go from like the hustle and bustle of Denver to then kind of start winding through. There's like some pastoral kind of farms up between Lyons and Superior, or between Superior and Lyons. And then from Lyons onwards, it was very much so like, gaining an elevation, going into like the deeper mountains versus kind of just the foothills there.
So the path from Denver to Rocky Mountain National Park is something that you've experienced and driven your whole life. Did it feel, unfamiliar or new in a way by seeing it on foot and seeing it at that pace versus in a car?
Yeah, definitely. I would say the Denver portion specifically, I had some of those feelings because, you know, I had gone to Rocky in my life, but not so often that it was like a super familiar drive necessarily. But just in Denver, yeah, I mean, like it's funny because in the city there is the walking infrastructure, but it's almost like we don't do it very often. And so getting to do the walking in the city, just there was so much more that you noticed, or like little flowers popping up out of asphalt, or really cool street art, or just seeing like little bits of people's lives or little interactions that in a car, you know, you're not looking over there, or you're just not thinking about those things, or you're trying to get to where you're going. So definitely had that experience in Denver. And then for the portion of the road from Lyons into the park, yeah, I mean, it was definitely a very unique experience to see the road, I think, at that pace and from that perspective. And, you know, after having hiked it, like I was driven out from Rocky Mountain National Park, you know, I had to get out. And so driving that road all the way back after having just taken, you know, 2 days to do that section of the road, it was a really intense experience to be like, whoa, we just drove down this in, you know, 35 minutes. And that was something that took 2 days of walking to accomplish. And so, yeah, that it definitely a lot of like things that you notice and see, and just a completely different perspective to be walking versus just driving.
When you're walking, you don't miss a beat. You don't miss anything. You have the chance to see every little piece of trash on the side of the road, every little detail. You get to, you know, take a double take just about anything, just because you got the time, and you notice everything. You notice the smells, the temperature, the feeling in the air, even.
Yeah, no, it totally was amazing. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because usually when I'm on like a hike, I always pick up like any little pieces of trash I see or something. And so that was something that was hard for me. I wanted to pick up like all of these pieces of trash, you know, and I was like, no, I can't. Like, I don't have the capacity to be able to pack this out right now. So, yeah, but you definitely, you don't miss a beat, and you get to see the city and just kind of all aspects of the hike in a very different way.
And another thing is, it's pretty much completely uphill going the way you went. Like, it's one freaking long climb until you get to kind of a summit right before Estes. Yeah. But it's essentially all uphill. Was there a point at all that it felt like just too much for you, too bizarre of experience, or too difficult?
Yeah, there's kind of 2 points that stick out in my mind that I was kind of ready to be like, no, I can't do this. So as I mentioned, the second day, Superior to Lyons, that was 27 miles. And I like hiking, and I've gone on some longer hikes, but probably maybe like 14-mile days at most before that. And so 27 miles was a lot. And also for anyone out there who does a fair amount of like urban hiking, 27 miles on pounding on pavement, or maybe if you're like a runner or a marathoner or something, 27 miles on pavement just is a completely different experience for your body than on a trail. And so I remember waking up the second day and just like starting that morning and being like, you know, I just like something in my like foot hurts, but like I was like, it's fine. I'll just keep going, and just progressing throughout that day. Both of my feet started hurting just like so much worse, and in a way that I had never experienced before in a regular hike. And so I remember I stopped in Niwot for lunch, and I remember after lunch kind of getting back into it and just getting to this point of being like, oh my God, I still have 3 more hours of walking to get to Lyons. Like, my feet hurt so bad, and just sitting on this rock and like just, you know, feeling like mentally totally ready to be done with it. But I kept walking, and I made it to Lyons, and ultimately made it to Rocky Mountain National Park. But yeah, that was one time I remember where I just was like, man, I really can't do this. And then of course I found out later when I got to Lyons, like what was going on, why my feet hurt so bad. And like when I went to take my socks off, I had actually like my feet had started bruising just from that repetitive impact. So I had like both on the arch of my feet and on the outside of my foot just were like swollen bruises. And so that was one of the times. And then the second one, which I kind of mentioned already before, that there was like one section within the canyon that there just was basically no shoulder, and I was jumping guardrails and my heart was racing, and I just like felt like I just had so much adrenaline, and I sat down and just was like, this is like, why am I doing this? So those are kind of the two that stand out in my mind, of being kind of like, this is so intense, and like, did I bite off more than I can chew,
Standing on the side of the highway in a canyon with no shoulder and having to jump over guardrails every time a car goes by with hurting feet. Yeah, I think I would think a time or two, like, what the hell am I doing out here?
Yeah.
Every adventure has a moment like that on anything. And you really got to know, like, your why. So what, at that point, how did you feel that experience, or what you were experiencing up until that point, tied back to your overall reason for doing this?
Yeah. That section from Lyons into Estes Park, I think, that I was nervous about the 27-mile day because I knew that was going to be a long day, but I think I was maybe arguably more nervous for that section just because I knew that it wasn't made for walking and it was going to be really intense. But again, I intentionally, there's one other way to get into Rocky Mountain National Park from Lyons. You can take Highway 7. But I really intentionally wanted to take that route because, as I mentioned earlier, that's, the primary way that so many people from Denver, from the Front Range of Colorado, make it into the park. And so, I don't know if it, in the moment, as I was just trying to make sure that I was safe, I don't know if it dawned on me in the moment, like, like you're doing that, this is the why, like, this is the reason, and you're here and you're doing it. But I think definitely in hindsight and just reflecting on it, that was the most important section of the hike, I think, in my mind. Just understanding how much effort it takes to get to places like Rocky Mountain National Park, whether, by foot or by car. If some of those barriers are realities for you, it can feel like it's as hard as walking there, to try to get there. So yeah, I think that's how I would answer that question.
It's symbolic of the barriers that some folks face to get there, but also it's the actual barriers, transportation and access. Well said. And also, I wanted to ask you, there's a spot on that road where you kind of get over the hill, get over the pass, and you look down into the valley where Estes Park is, and you see, kind of where it starts climbing back up to Rocky Mountain National Park. And that view there is unbelievable. And that's the first clear view on that road of the large, alpine mountains. Did you see that view? Was it a clear day? Were you able to see that?
Yeah, it was amazing. So basically during the kind of like throughout the 4 days, I took little videos, just both like mostly for myself, just to be able to look back on and remember this experience. And I remember that was like a standout moment, and I stopped and took a video, and there's a nice big pull off there. So that was nice. I was able to also just take a little break from the shoulder. But again, if you have ever been to Colorado or are from here, there's kind of this difference between, there's like the foothills, which you see kind of like all around you to the west when you're in the city. And then as you're driving and you get closer kind of to the Rockies, you can see the mountain just kind of changes, and it becomes kind of this like incredible jagged gray, like just so high, like so big, these peaks. And so I remember kind of that first moment seeing like that peek through the canyon and just getting so excited and just knowing, like that was on the last day. So there's already a lot of excitement and a lot of energy to get there, but just knowing like, okay, like I'm doing it, like I'm here. yeah, I mean, I think still to this day, sometimes I'm driving along that road or even along the 36 bikeway between Denver and Boulder, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I walked that, and so I think seeing those peaks and like in contrast to Union Station, and then just knowing in my mind, knowing the distance between Union Station and that viewpoint there, I think that it just felt really huge to know that I had made it there just on, on my own 2 feet.
So you see that beautiful sight, symbolic of the barriers folks were facing, like we said before, but also the payoff that is in store for folks that do make it out there. But your journey wasn't over. You still had to walk through Estes Park, the town of Estes, and then still a few miles to get to the actual visitor center at Beaver Creek Meadows, I believe, or Beaver Creek. Tell us, how it was getting to the entrance.
Yeah, so I officially ended at the sign, but like walked up to the visitor center as well. But yeah, so after that point that you mentioned of like initially seeing the peaks, you get to the tallest point of the hike, the highest elevation, and then it's kind of all downhill into Estes Park. And before seeing the sign, I just want to mention another thing, like getting into the city of Estes Park. I remember feeling the greatest relief to be back on a sidewalk. I really want to just shout out sidewalks because they are amazing and incredible. And that was a huge feeling, just getting back on a sidewalk. And then, of course, going through in Estes Park, there's kind of this little river walk. And I remember also thinking, I was like, oh, like the whole rest of the hike, it was like really weird that I was dressed the way that I was and that I was walking on the side of a road that you're not supposed to walk on. But in Estes Park, it's like a hiking town. And so I don't nobody looked at me strangely or anything. Like they were just like, oh, she's here to see the park,
No one's asking you if you're okay.
Yeah. So having that was kind of an interesting experience as well. But so then you get past kind of downtown Estes Park and keep walking alongside the shoulder of the road. It's still 36 at that point, but it's not as intense. And so I remember when as I was walking up to the sign, there was actually a line of cars waiting to get into the park. So that was just kind of interesting knowing that there was traffic to get into the park, or car traffic to get into the park, and me having just walked 4 days to get there, was going to reach that sign before these cars were. And then I remember just seeing the sign and just shedding a tear under my sunglasses. It felt so surreal. And just walking up to it and being I did it. And just feeling so incredibly proud of myself and my body for being able to get me here, but also just, I think a lot of times when we, sign up for something like this or make a commitment to someone else or to our community, it feels like there's a lot of pressure. You want to make sure that you're able to do it. And I think, this was such an outlandish idea that to know that then I had done it and I followed through in my commitment both to the Cairn Project and to my community, and to using my privilege to talk about these things and showcase these barriers that folks can have to accessing these places. It was just surreal to be there and to know that I had accomplished my goal in getting there. And then at the same time, it was also I was thinking, I was like, man, if I was in one of these cars, I would probably be like, wow, that girl is so excited to see this sign. So it was both for me incredibly significant, and then it was kind of funny too, just thinking about how insignificant it probably was for people seeing it happen, not knowing what it was.
I bet the mountains in the park never looked so beautiful that day. I feel like when I go somewhere on my own 2 feet or on a bike or with any sort of difficult effort, even driving there, like you said, can be difficult, just getting it all worked out. It's so much more vivid and brilliant and bright and beautiful. And I've gone to the same places, on a whim in a car, and it's not as difficult. And the place is almost a little muted compared to the time I saw it after something really difficult to get there. And I'm sure for you, Rocky Mountain National Park had never been so beautiful.
Yeah, that's for sure. The sign for sure had never been so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah. And that was kind of the other funny thing is, instead of like then going into the park after that point and, I definitely wasn't going to keep hiking. But it was kind of cool to have that be like the thing that I was getting to in the visitor center. But yeah, it definitely, I think it won't ever quite be the same, like pulling up to the park as as having walked it the one time.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned through this experience? What do you think the biggest lesson is that you've learned? Hey, folks, we're going to take a quick message break, hear from some of the sponsors. Thank you for putting up with these. They definitely help the show a lot, so thank you.
Introducing Force Factor Fundamentals. Exclusively at the Vitamin Shop, these men's health essentials have clinically studied ingredients like BioPurine for enhanced absorption. Yohimbine, pine bark, and L-arginine can help you strengthen blood flow and heighten passion with doses that may bring you the results you crave. Now you can save 20% on Force Factor, including the fundamentals at the Vitamin Shop. Get these men's health game changers in your life at any The Vitamin Shop store or vitaminshop.com.
All right, that's enough of that. Let's get back to the episode.
That's a good question. Kind of like I mentioned, I think there's a lot of, talk and training and learning and unlearning that's going on for a lot of folks. And I think especially like as a white person, I think there's a lot of that going on for myself personally in the outdoor space, and just in life in general. And so I think the greatest thing that I learned was, we need to act on that as well. And that's kind of the symbolism for me of like walk the walk. I kind of mentioned one person stopped me along the way. They were a cyclist and they're like, "Oh, I saw you earlier today. Like, that's a long way to be walking, And I think my kind of big takeaway at the end was like, my whole point in this is to have folks, examine your own life, examine your own privileges, access, barriers, things like that maybe you have experienced, maybe you haven't, and think about what are ways that we can act on those things and help break down those barriers and help, pass the mic and amplify the voices of those who maybe don't look like us. Because otherwise, it really was just a long way to walk if there isn't that action and kind of next steps after it. So, yeah.
Wow. No, you literally are walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And I love that name, by the way, because it's walking the walk is very difficult. But the reward of accomplishing what you set out to do is also incredible. Now, can I ask you this? On this show, we talk so much about adventures and people doing really, really crazy things and really out-of-the-box things. How did this change your view of just what adventures are possible? And has it inspired you to maybe think about something else that you want to do? Do you like this formula of setting a difficult goal and achieving it and to bring awareness to things? I think I asked you 3 questions at the same time just then. I can break it down a little more, but unless you want to take a stab at it like that.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it, and then you can follow up if I didn't quite capture everything. But, I think for me, one of the other components of this, like I talked a lot about kind of the transportation aspect, but I think there's kind of been an understanding in the outdoors community also that you don't like the outdoors doesn't have to mean these like places like Rocky Mountain National Park. It can also mean, and it also does mean, just like places right outside your door, like nearby nature or your local park. And I think for me, that especially that beginning part of the hike, just seeing, the little like flowers peeking out of the asphalt. And I think it made me think about like, how can we, how can we continue to promote getting outside, but also know that that can look very different for everyone, and that's not, like places within a city that are nature are not necessarily worse or better than any other place. So I think that was kind of one of the things. And I also realized like I definitely like this urban hiking model, and I want to shout out Liz Thomas right now as well. I kind of learned a lot from her, and was lucky enough to actually get to talk to her before I did this hike. She is kind of the queen of urban through hiking, and also has done a lot of, like the PCT and everything like that as well. But I think there's something to be said about hiking, a city or your state or something like that in this urban through hiking kind of way. Because as we mentioned, a lot of things that you wouldn't see in a car, you get to pick up on. And I think it just adds kind of this more human level of, like we're all out here just trying to make it and going through our days. And you just, I don't know, you got to see a lot of cool things that you didn't before. You get to have a great appreciation of sidewalks. So yeah, I don't know if that answered all of your questions, but
definitely. And Liz Thomas has been on the show, I think 3 times in the past.
Awesome.
Like way back when we've have 750 episodes. She was, I think, episode 40 something early on.
Yeah.
And that was before I even hosted the show. And then again in episode, like around episode 100. But yeah, she's legendary.
Yeah.
But that is so cool that someone on the show before and helped inspire you. And the urban through hiking is, I mean, between that and being out in the middle of nowhere on one of these through hiking trails, if you can be happy urban through hiking, be happy out in the middle of nowhere, everything else in between is also fair game. So something we constantly try to push for on this show is that adventure, like you said, is not these iconic grand places. It is those places, but it's also camping in your backyard or doing something different and sleep. Like we told people one time, like sleep on your porch tonight. Do something really, just tweak your routine enough to make you look at things in a new light and just change your perspective. It can really just help break up the monotony of life and really add a lot of joy to your life, micro adventures. And so that when we start looking at adventures in that sense too, it can really make it more approachable for everyone. No matter their background, their race, their experience, it can make it manageable to try something you never tried before, like walking through your hometown up to the closest national park over 4 days. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, is there anything you'd like to share? Where can folks find out more about the Cairn Project, as well as anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, you can look up the Cairn Project. That's spelled CARN, like the rock stacks. And yeah, there's a couple of fundraisers going on right now. They're still doing the good work of gathering money for those micro grants to specifically support girls and young women into getting into the outdoors, and see if there's any fundraisers there. Apply to be an ambassador if that's something that you're interested in. And also just, even outside of the Cairn Project, I would say just if this is something that's interesting to you, just, there's so many organizations out there and so many organizations that have been doing this work and kind of the grassroots work for so long, trying to push for more diversity, equity, and inclusion in the outdoors and breaking down barriers. I would just encourage everyone to start, do some more research, start looking into some of these organizations, and really see what it is that you can do also to help walk the walk.
Well, Julia, that's perfect. Yeah, thank you for being on the show. This was great.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been fun. It's, I did the walk, like I mentioned, in 2019, and so it's always fun to kind of look back at it and to relive those memories. So yeah, I appreciate you having me.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably been hearing a lot about the stock market lately. Millions of people are beginning to invest for the first time ever. And we're realizing that the financial system should be built to work for us. That's why Robinhood is creating real human education resources, truly digestible financial news, and a platform that lets you invest in your own way, on your own terms. The next generation of investors is already here, and it includes you. Robinhood. Investing is risky. Robinhood Financial, LLC.
If your loved one is at risk of a fall, the Symphony Medical Alert System from CVS Health can help support their safety in their home with 24/7 emergency monitoring, even when you can't be there. Terms and conditions apply. Learn more about Symphony at cvs.com/symphony or find it at your nearest CVS Health Hub.